My name is Elena Morales. I'm 34 years old, and until last Sunday, I thought I understood my place in my family. That belief ended at a long wooden table in my mother's dining room, with half-eaten plates, cooling coffee, and the soft clink of forks pretending nothing was wrong. We had gathered for our usual Sunday lunch. Nothing special. Roast chicken, salad no one touched, bread that went stale by the time dessert came out. My family liked routine. Routine made everything feel harmless, even when it wasn't. My younger sister, Paula, sat across from me, scrolling on her phone between bites. She'd always been like that, effortlessly confident, effortlessly centered. The kind of person who could dominate a room without raising her voice. I was the opposite. I noticed everything. I adjusted. I smoothed edges before anyone realized they were sharp. At the end of the meal, as my mom cleared plates and my dad refilled his coffee, Paula set her fork down carefully. She smiled at me, not warmly, not cruelly, just practically. "Hey," she said, like she was offering a helpful tip. "Next Sunday, maybe don't come, okay?" The room didn't stop breathing. No dramatic pause. No gasp. She continued, still smiling. "It'll just mess with the vibe. We're trying to keep things simple." Simple. She didn't whisper. She didn't glance around to see if anyone objected. She said it the way someone suggests a different restaurant or an earlier reservation time. My mother suddenly became very interested in stacking plates. My father stared into his mug like it might explain something to him if he looked long enough. No one said my name. I felt my face do what it had been trained to do for years: soften, relax, cooperate. I smiled back. "Yeah," I said lightly. "Sure." Because in my family, reactions were dangerous. Hurt meant sensitive. Questions meant dramatic. Silence meant peace. Smiling was survival. Inside, something shifted. Not snapped, shifted. Like a shelf sliding out of alignment. Like realizing the floor under your feet isn't actually attached to the building. For a moment, I felt like I was watching myself from above. A grown woman nodding politely while being dismissed from her own family's schedule. Like I was a guest who had overstayed without realizing it. The conversation limped on after that. Weather. Traffic. Someone's coworker drama. No one circled back. No one corrected her. No one said, "That was unnecessary," or even, "What do you mean by that?" That silence wasn't neutral. It was agreement. I don't know why I looked at my dad. Maybe I was hoping for a raised eyebrow, a small shake of the head, something. He didn't meet my eyes. I finished my coffee. I stood. I hugged my mother. I waved at Paula. I joked about parking being a nightmare. I left like nothing had happened. The drive home felt unreal, like I was moving through fog. My phone buzzed once with a group chat notification, Paula sharing a meme. No mention of what she just said. No follow-up. No apology. At home, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of my couch, staring at nothing. I'd spent years telling myself I was imagining things. That it wasn't exclusion, it was convenience. That it wasn't being overlooked, it was flexibility. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a demanding schedule. I could adapt. I was the one who adjusted plans, covered gaps, stepped in. I was the one who remembered birthdays when no one else did. The one who booked reservations. The one who paid first and asked questions later. The one who handled logistics so everyone else could just enjoy. And suddenly, at that table, I saw it clearly. I wasn't being invited anymore. I was being managed. That night, I opened my laptop. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. I logged into accounts I'd set up years ago. Things no one else bothered to learn because I'd always handled them. Shared calendars. Group bookings. Auto payments. I stared at the screen longer than I expected to. Paula's words echoed, calm and casual. "It'll mess with the vibe." For the first time, I asked myself a question I'd avoided for years. What happens if I stop holding everything together? I didn't do anything yet. Not that night. I closed the laptop, took a shower, went to bed, but something had already ended. Not loudly, not angrily, quietly. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to fix it. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Not because I had somewhere to be, but because my mind wouldn't stop moving. Paula's voice replayed itself in my head, calm and reasonable, like she'd done me a kindness. It'll mess with the vibe. I made coffee and stood in my kitchen, staring at the counter where unopened mail had begun to pile up. I thought about how often I'd been standing exactly there, phone wedged between my ear and shoulder, fixing something for someone else before they even asked. That was my role. The fixer. The buffer. The extra pair of hands. I hadn't chosen it. It had just happened. After my divorce 3 years ago, everyone decided I had more time. I didn't argue. I was rebuilding, trying to stay steady. Helping felt easier than explaining my own mess. So when my brother Marco needed help moving, I showed up with boxes and coffee. When my parents planned their anniversary dinner and got overwhelmed, I made the reservations. When Paula had her first baby and said she couldn't think straight anymore, I organized meal schedules and babysitting calendars. Each time, someone said, "You're so good at this," and I believed them. What I didn't notice was how rarely anyone asked if I wanted to be. By Tuesday, the family group chat was active again. Paula posted a picture of her kids at the park. My mom responded with heart emojis. Marco sent a voice note complaining about work. Normal. Comfortable. Like Sunday had never happened. I didn't say anything. Later that afternoon, my mom called. "Sweetheart," she said, using the tone she reserved for requests disguised as concern. "Do you still have the login for the shared calendar?" "Yes," I replied. "Good. We're thinking of moving dinner next week to Saturday. Could you update it?" Next week. The one I'd been quietly uninvited from. I closed my eyes. "I can," I said, because that's what I always said. After we hung up, I sat back down at my laptop and opened the calendar. Color-coded blocks filled the screen. Birthdays, dinners, trips, appointments. I created it so everyone could stay organized. Scrolling through it felt like reading a record of my usefulness. That's when I opened the travel folder. The summer trip. Europe. 2 weeks. Something Paula had called the reset we all needed. I'd planned it 6 months earlier, down to transit times and backup hotels. Flights coordinated. Deposits paid. A shared travel card in my name because my credit limit was higher and, as Marco had joked, "You're better with this stuff." At the time, it felt normal. Now it felt like leverage I hadn't realized I was holding. I remembered a moment from last year, standing in an airport line, while Paula complained about legroom. "Can you upgrade us?" she'd asked casually. I'd done it. Marco had laughed. My parents had thanked me. I'd smiled. I clicked into the account details. Everything was tied to me. Not because anyone demanded it, but because no one else volunteered. I didn't cancel anything yet. Instead, I made a list. Not on paper. In my head, times I'd paid and said nothing. Times I'd adjusted and been praised for being easy. Times I'd been included only because I made things smoother. By Wednesday, the weight of it sat heavy in my chest. Marco texted me that night. "Hey, can you send me the insurance info for the trip? Just want to make sure the kids are covered." I stared at the message. A few days earlier, I'd been told not to come because I'd ruined the vibe. And yet, here I was, still expected to make sure everything ran. That was the quiet thread I finally understood. You're welcome as long as you're useful. You're optional when you're not. I typed back, "I'll check," and set my phone down. I didn't check. Instead, I opened my banking app. I scrolled through recurring payments. There it was, Marco's rent contribution. $700, auto-sent every month. Something I'd agreed to temporarily when he'd switched jobs. That had been 2 years ago. I thought about how often my parents talked about responsibility, about families sticking together, about sacrifice. Funny how sacrifice always seemed to land in the same place. By Thursday, my sister messaged me directly. "Hey, just checking, are you all good? You seemed quiet." Quiet. Not hurt. Not excluded. Quiet. "I'm fine," I typed. And for the first time, it wasn't a lie. Because something inside me had settled. Not into anger. Into resolve. That night, I reopened my laptop. This time, I didn't hesitate. I started with the smallest thing. The shared calendar. I removed myself as the administrator. Then I logged into the travel bookings. I hovered over the cancel button longer than I expected. Not because I was afraid, but because I was mourning something. The version of me who thought being indispensable meant being loved. I clicked. One by one, the the plans unraveled. Reservations disappeared. Deposits reversed. Notifications pinged softly in the corner of my screen. No drama. No announcement. Just absence. When I was done, I closed the laptop and sat back, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something close to relief. For the first time, the question wasn't whether they'd be upset. It was whether I was finally done carrying what no one else noticed. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. There were no messages sent, no explanations offered, no dramatic exits from group chats. I went to work the next day like it was any other Friday, answered emails, sat through meetings, smiled when appropriate. It felt strange how normal everything looked when something so final had already happened. By Saturday morning, my phone was still quiet. No one had noticed yet. Or maybe they had, but assumed I'd fix it like I always did. I went to the gym. I bought groceries. I folded laundry while listening to a podcast I'd been saving for later. For once, later had arrived. The silence was almost peaceful. Until it wasn't. I was halfway through making lunch when my phone buzzed on the counter. Dad's name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. It rang again. I flipped the phone face down and took a breath. My hands were steady. That surprised me. A few minutes later, a text from Marco came through. "Hey, we're having trouble checking in. Do you know what's going on?" I read it twice. Not "Are you okay?" Not "Can you help?" Just confusion, like the world had malfunctioned without explanation. I didn't reply. Another call. This time from my mom. I let it go to voicemail. The next message came from Paula. "Something's wrong with the bookings. Can you call me?" There it was. The moment everything tipped. I sat down on the couch and stared at the wall across from me. The urge to respond rose up fast and familiar. The fixer instinct. The need to smooth things over before anyone got too uncomfortable. I pushed it down. Instead, I typed one sentence. "Enjoy the vibe." I didn't wait for a reply. I locked my phone and set it aside. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine the scene I'd been excluded from. The airport terminal. Paula pacing near the counter, her voice getting sharper with every explanation that led nowhere. Marco juggling bags and kids, irritation spilling over. My parents standing off to the side, confused, embarrassed, waiting for someone else to solve it. Waiting for me. But I wasn't there. I made myself a sandwich and ate it slowly. I cleaned the kitchen. I went for a walk. When I came back, my phone had lit up with missed calls. 5 from my mom. 3 from my dad. 2 from Paula. No messages apologizing. No one asking what they'd done. Just urgency. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I woke to a single text from my brother. "We're stuck. What did you do?" I stared at the words longer than necessary. There was no anger in them. Just disbelief. Like I'd broken an unspoken contract. I typed back. I stopped. That was all. Later that day, I opened my banking app again. The rent payment was scheduled to go out in 2 days. I hovered over the cancel button. This one felt heavier. Marco had never asked me directly to keep paying. It had just continued, month after month. Because I hadn't stopped it. Because stopping meant conversation. And I'd learned early that silence was easier. I canceled it. The confirmation popped up on my screen, small and unceremonious. No fireworks. No guilt message. I set the phone down and went about my day. By evening, the calls slowed, replaced by silence thick enough to feel. That night, my mom finally texted. "We had to book something last minute. The kids are exhausted. Your sister's upset. Can you please call me?" There was no apology. No acknowledgement of Sunday. No recognition of what had been said or how it had landed. Just expectation. I locked my phone and placed it in a drawer. For the first time, I wasn't going to translate their discomfort into my responsibility. I spent the evening reading on my balcony as the sun went down, the city humming below me. The quiet felt unfamiliar, like wearing a coat I wasn't sure I deserved. The next few days passed without contact. No group chat updates. No memes. No casual check-ins. It felt less like they were giving me space and more like they were waiting. Waiting for me to break. To reach out. To fix what I'd undone. I didn't. On Wednesday night, my apartment buzzer rang. Once. Twice. I wasn't expecting anyone. I answered. "It's me," Marco said. "Open the door." I hesitated, then buzzed him in. He walked into my apartment like it was still his. Didn't sit down. Didn't take off his jacket. Just stood there, arms stiff at his sides, jaw tight. "You seriously messed everything up," he said. No greeting. No concern. Just accusation. I didn't interrupt him. I let him talk about the ruin plans, the stress, the embarrassment. About how unfair it was that I'd let one comment turn into a disaster. When he finally paused, I asked quietly, "What comment?" He frowned. "You know what I mean." "No," I said. "Say it." He didn't. The silence stretched between us, heavy and telling. I looked at him then, not with anger, but with clarity. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't about a trip. It was about what they expected me to absorb without complaint. Marco stopped pacing and looked at me like I was being deliberately difficult. "You know, Paula didn't mean it like that," he said. "She was stressed. You always take things personally." There it was. The familiar reframing. The part where the injury became my reaction, not their action. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. Instead, I asked, "How many trips have I paid for?" He blinked. "That's not." "Answer the question," I said calmly. He exhaled sharply. "I don't know." "A few." "How many dinners?" I continued. "How many upgrades? How many I'll get at this time, moments that never came back around?" He shifted his weight. "Families don't keep score." I nodded slowly. "You're right. Families don't. But users do." His face tightened. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. "When was the last time you paid your own rent?" The words landed harder than I expected. He stared at me. "You're really going to throw that in my face?" I didn't answer. I reached for my phone, opened my banking app, and turned the screen toward him. 2 years. $700 a month. Payment after payment. He stared at it in silence. "I thought you didn't mind," he said finally. His voice was quieter now. "You never said anything." "Exactly," I replied. "You counted on that." That was the moment something shifted between us. Not dramatically. Not explosively. Just irrevocably. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm done. I'm not the extra person who fills the gaps anymore. I'm not the backup plan. And I'm definitely not your wallet." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, then closed it again. Without another word, he turned and walked out. I locked the door behind him and leaned against it, my heart pounding, not with fear, but with finality. That was the break. The real one. The kind that doesn't come from shouting, but from clarity. The next week passed in silence. No calls. No texts. No passive-aggressive messages disguised as concern. It felt like being cut off and finally left alone at the same time. I kept expecting someone to reach out and tell me I'd gone too far. To remind me of all the things I should be grateful for. To accuse me of being dramatic. It didn't happen. Then, on Sunday morning, my phone buzzed. A message from my dad. "Can we talk? Just you and me." I stared at the screen for a long moment. My dad wasn't a bad man. He just believed in peace more than fairness. In keeping things smooth, even when someone was quietly being crushed underneath. "If you want to talk," I typed back. "Come here." He arrived an hour later. Same knock he'd used my whole life. Controlled. Familiar. He sat across from me at the kitchen table without asking for coffee. Without small talk. "I didn't realize how much you were carrying," he said. I stayed quiet. "I thought you liked being the organizer," he continued. "That it made you feel involved. We stopped checking if you were okay with it." That landed. Then he said the words I hadn't expected. "I'm sorry." Not rushed. Not defensive. Just steady. "I stayed quiet when your sister said that," he added. "That was wrong." I nodded once. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper. "A receipt. I paid Marco's rent," he said. "This month. He has to figure it out from here." I stared at it longer than necessary. That piece of paper wasn't about money. It was about weight being lifted. Before he left, he said, "You were never the one without kids who had more time. You were the one we leaned on too much." After he walked out, I sat alone in my kitchen, exhausted in a way that felt clean. The next day, Paula showed up unannounced. She stood in my doorway holding a bag from the deli I loved, The one she always complained was overpriced. I said something awful, she admitted. I was overwhelmed. And you were the safest target. She slid a check across the counter. For the last few trips, she said. I don't want my kids thinking you're just the aunt who pays for things. I didn't say thank you. I said, that comment ended something. She nodded. I know. When she left, I realized something important. Apologies didn't undo patterns, but accountability could stop them. I didn't rush into forgiveness. That surprised them. For years, I had been predictable. Hurt, yes, but quick to smooth things over. Quick to accept apologies that sounded good enough. This time, I let the quiet stretch. 3 full weeks passed without a family gathering. No, just checking in texts. No requests disguised as favors. The silence felt strange, like standing in a room after the noise stops and realizing how loud it had been before. Then I sent one message to the group chat. We need to talk. All of us. At my place. You'll listen first. No emojis. No explanations. The replies came quickly. Okay. Understood. We'll be there. No one pushed back. That alone told me something had changed. They arrived on a Thursday evening. No one was late. No one made jokes in the hallway. When I opened the door, they stepped in quietly, like people entering a room where they already knew they were at fault. No one reached for snacks. No one claimed the couch. They sat where there was space. I stood for a moment, steadying myself. My hands weren't shaking. My voice didn't waver. I'm not your backup plan, I said. And I'm not your wallet. No one interrupted. I'm your daughter. Your sister. And for years I've been treated like an accessory. Useful when needed, invisible when not. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't dramatize it. I listed facts. The trips I paid for. The rent I covered. The plans I made. The way no one noticed when I stopped being included. Only when things stopped working. This isn't about one comment, I continued. That comment just made it impossible for me to ignore the pattern anymore. My sister stared at her hands. My mom pressed her lips together, eyes shining. My dad stayed still, listening. Marco spoke first. You're right, he said quietly. I should have said something when Paula said that. I didn't think you'd actually stop. That's the problem, I replied. You counted on me not stopping. He nodded. No excuses. Paula spoke next. I convinced myself I could apologize later, like always. I didn't realize how much you were carrying. She slid another check across the table. It's not everything, but it's a start. Then something unexpected happened. Marco stood, pulled out his phone, and turned the screen toward me. A banking app. A rent payment. I paid it, he said. From my account. I picked up extra shifts. My mom finally spoke. I told myself it was okay because you had more, she said softly. But we took more because we thought we could. My dad took a breath. That ends now. I told them I wouldn't be joining the next trip. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. I need to see the change hold, I said. No one argued. That's fair, my dad replied. When they left, I locked the door and leaned against it, exhausted, but lighter than I'd felt in years. The next months were quiet in a different way. No frantic messages. No assumptions. When plans were made, I was asked, not assigned. Costs were split without discussion. If I didn't respond right away, no one followed up with urgency. The space felt unfamiliar at first. Then it felt like peace. They took a short lake trip in June without me. My sister sent one photo. No filters. No caption. Missed you. I believed her. A few weeks later, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. You always made things special. We're trying to catch up. Taped inside was a gift card to my favorite bookstore, the one I'd mentioned once years ago. It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. That Sunday, my mom texted me. Dinner tonight. Just us. I paused before replying. Not with hesitation, but with awareness. This wasn't a trap. It wasn't a test. It was a choice. I went. The house smelled familiar. The warm scent of roasted vegetables, garlic, and bread fresh from the oven. The table was set simply, with enough plates, napkins, and glasses for each of us. Nothing extravagant. Nothing to show off. Just us. Halfway through dinner, my mom looked across the table. We're glad you're here, she said. I smiled softly. It was the first time I truly felt it. That simple acknowledgement carried more weight than years of doing everything quietly. I wasn't just functional. I wasn't invisible. I was part of them. A daughter. A sister. Their family. After dessert, my dad handed me a folder. A deed amendment. My name had been added to the family cabin, the one I helped maintain but was never officially considered part of unless something broke. It's part yours now, he said. Not because you paid, but because you carried us. I stood holding the folder, letting it sink in. The paper wasn't just about ownership. It was a symbol, a tangible proof that for the first time, they recognized me. Not for what I gave, but for who I was. From that day forward, things changed. When we planned trips, I was included from the start. Costs were shared fairly. My sister asked if I wanted my own space. My brother offered to drive, or take on responsibilities I didn't want. My dad said, "Send your availability first." They didn't always get it perfect, but they tried, and that effort mattered more than perfection. It mattered because it was honest. No assumptions, no silent expectations, no invisible labor stacked on my shoulders. I felt the difference most clearly when they came to me for a favor that didn't require planning, payment, or fixing anything. A simple question: can you come along? Not, can you make this work for us? Not, will you handle it? Just, do you want to be part of it? For the first time in my adult life, I felt home in my family. Not because I controlled events or covered costs, but because I was seen. Months later, another envelope arrived. Inside, a handwritten note from my sister. "You always made things special. We're trying to catch up." There was also a gift card to my favorite bookstore, the one I'd mentioned once in passing. She didn't say it was for compensation, or to make up for the past. It was a small, thoughtful gesture that said, "I notice you. I see you." We sat down together for a quiet coffee one Saturday afternoon. She admitted how much she had underestimated me. How easy it was to assume I would always handle things without complaint. "You were always the safe one," she said. "I thought it was easier to let you carry things, but I didn't realize what I was asking." I listened. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to prove my value. She said it herself. That acknowledgement, spoken calmly and honestly, was more than enough. And my parents, they've changed too. Not suddenly, not perfectly, but with awareness. Every small act now carries intention. A text to ask if I'm okay. A phone call to confirm availability before plans are made. A smile at the dinner table that means more than pleasantries. Sometimes I think back to that Sunday lunch, the one where Paula told me not to come next week, casually, without hesitation. The one where the rest of my family stayed quiet. I remember smiling back then because I thought that was the safest choice. Neutral. Unprovable. Now I smile differently. Not out of defense. Not out of habit. But out of calm knowledge that boundaries matter, that patience has limits, and that I am valued. That day was not the start of a fight. It was the moment I realized I had a voice, and that sometimes the quietest choices are the loudest. The cabin. The bookstore card. The coffee. The simple acknowledgement. "We're glad you're here." These are symbols of change, yes. But more importantly, they are proof that respect and care are earned when silence is honored, when boundaries are maintained, and when the people who once assumed your presence realize your absence matters. I don't feel like the extra person anymore. I don't feel like the fixer or the planner who exists to smooth everyone else's life. I feel like a daughter, a sister, a part of a family that finally sees me. And that makes all the difference.